Here's why Rhaenys felt betrayed by Rhaenyra's silence during Driftmark's dispute. It was one of the tensest moments in House of the Dragon, a gathering at Driftmark that felt less like a family council and more like a powder keg waiting to explode. Lines were being drawn, allegiances tested, and pride, that ever-dangerous Targaryen pride, was burning just beneath the surface. But in the middle of all that fire and fury, there was one silent act that cut deeper than any sword. Rhaenys Targaryen, the queen who never was, looked at Rhaenyra, the woman she had quietly supported for years, and saw not an ally, but a stranger. Because in that moment, Rhaenyra said nothing. And that silence felt like betrayal. This is the untold story of why Rhaenys Velaryon, one of the wisest and most formidable women in Westeros, felt betrayed by Rhaenyra's silence during the Driftmark dispute. It's a story about family, politics, and the price of loyalty when the Iron Throne looms over every choice. Let's dive into the fire. To understand Rhaenys' heartbreak, we must first understand who she is, and what she's lost. Rhaenys Targaryen was born to rule. She was a dragon rider, a visionary, and perhaps the only person who could have kept the realm stable after King Jaehaerys. But she was passed over. Despite having a stronger claim than Viserys, the lords of Westeros decided that the realm would never accept a woman on the Iron Throne. That wound never truly healed. Rhaenys didn't let the bitterness consume her, but it defined how she saw the world, especially other women who dared to dream of power. When Viserys later named Rhaenyra his heir, Rhaenys watched with quiet, conflicted admiration. She saw in Rhaenyra a version of herself, bold, ambitious, unwilling to bow to the rules of men. But she also saw danger. She knew what it cost to defy the patriarchy of Westeros. She knew the whispers, the schemes, the betrayals that would follow. And so, for years, Rhaenys stayed cautious. She stayed in the shadows, ruling Driftmark alongside her husband, Corlys Velaryon, the Sea Snake, building their house into one of the strongest in the realm. But everything changed when her grandchildren, Laena's and Laenyra's children, became pawns in the bloody game of succession. When Laenys was married to Rhaenyra, it was supposed to unite two great houses. But that alliance soon became a quiet scandal. Everyone whispered that Rhaenyra's children were not Velaryons at all, that they were strong boys, bastards born from her affair with Harwin Strong. Rhaenys never said it aloud, but she saw the truth. Those boys had no trace of Velaryon blood. No silver hair, no sea blue eyes, only dark curls and faces that mirrored their true father. For Rhaenys, that was a wound that went deeper than politics. It was personal, because while she loved Rhaenyra, she also loved Laenys. She had watched her son suffer under the weight of expectations, mocked for his nature, struggling to fulfill his duty. And when he disappeared, presumed dead, the rumors only grew louder. So when the question of Driftmark's succession arose after Corlys fell gravely ill, Rhaenys found herself in an impossible position. The seat of Driftmark, the legacy of House Velaryon, was at stake. And she was being asked to accept that it would pass to Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys Velaryon, a boy she knew carried not one drop of her blood. In that hall, surrounded by politics, deceit, and dragons, Rhaenys expected Rhaenyra to speak, to defend her family, to honor her son's legacy, to fight for the truth. But Rhaenyra stayed silent. That silence, in Rhaenys' eyes, was betrayal. Let's break down why. In Rhaenys' mind, this dispute wasn't just about titles. It was about blood, about legacy, about what it meant to belong. Rhaenys had spent her entire life watching men take what should have been hers. Watching her claim erased because she was a woman. Watching her family's name used to prop up others' ambitions. And now, once again, the Velaryon name, her name, was being used to legitimize Rhaenyra's children, children she knew were not true heirs. She expected Rhaenyra, at the very least, to acknowledge the pain behind that truth. But Rhaenyra couldn't, because admitting the truth about her children would destroy everything she had built, her position, her legitimacy, her future claim to the Iron Throne. Her silence wasn't cruelty, it was survival. Still, to Rhaenys, that silence cut like a blade. It wasn't just that Rhaenyra refused to speak, it was that she refused to see. She refused to see Rhaenys' grief, her anger, her fear of losing everything she had fought to preserve. Rhaenys had buried her daughter, Laena. She believed she had buried her son, Laenys. And now she was watching strangers, children of another man, about to inherit the legacy she had spent her life protecting. And Rhaenyra, the woman she once admired as the future of House Targaryen, said nothing. In that silence, Rhaenys realized something devastating. To Rhaenyra, family came second to the throne. This is what makes the Driftmark dispute one of the most emotionally charged moments in the entire series. Rhaenys' fury wasn't just about succession, it was about betrayal layered over betrayal. She had stood by Rhaenyra when others whispered against her. She had turned a blind eye to rumors that shamed her house. She had allowed her grandchildren to be mocked and questioned, all for the sake of unity between their families. And now, when her husband's health was failing and her lineage was under attack, Rhaenyra's silence felt like abandonment. But let's not mistake silence for apathy. Rhaenyra's choice to stay quiet wasn't born from indifference, it was a calculated move. She knew that speaking too boldly in that moment could doom both her children and herself. The court was full of vipers. Otto Hightower, Alicent, and their allies were waiting for her to slip. They were looking for any sign of weakness, any confession that could disqualify her claim. So she stayed silent, even as Rhaenys' eyes filled with the pain of betrayal. That's the tragedy. Both women were right. Rhaenys' pain was real. Her family legacy was being rewritten by deceit. And Rhaenyra's silence was also necessary, because the truth would destroy them both. But in politics, perception is everything. And to Rhaenys, silence looked like betrayal. To her, Rhaenyra's ambition had eclipsed her loyalty. There's a moment during that dispute where Rhaenys looks at Rhaenyra with something colder than anger, disappointment. It's the look of a woman who expected more from someone she saw as her successor, her kindred spirit, her mirror. In that moment, Rhaenys saw herself again, not as the queen who never was, but as the woman who was once promised fairness and never received it. She had spent her life believing that women like her and Rhaenyra could change the rules of the realm, that they could prove that women were just as capable of ruling as men. But Rhaenyra's silence reminded her that even women with dragons still played by the same rules. Rhaenyra's silence meant accepting a lie to hold power. And to Rhaenys, that was a betrayal of everything they both stood for. But what makes Rhaenys truly fascinating is that she didn't let bitterness define her. Instead, she waited, she watched, and eventually, Rhaenyra's silence became a lesson. When the dance of the dragons finally erupted, when bloodlines and loyalties shattered across the realm, Rhaenys chose her side. Despite her disappointment, despite the betrayal she felt, she stood with Rhaenyra. Why? Because Rhaenys understood something few others did: betrayal and loyalty can coexist. She might have felt abandoned during the Driftmark dispute, but she also saw in Rhaenyra a reflection of her younger self, flawed, proud, but determined to change history. Rhaenys' eventual loyalty wasn't born from blind faith, but from recognition. She knew the cost of silence, the cost of ambition, the cost of being a woman in a man's world.